Large pullbacks overall in the markets in here, especially in the NASDAQ, very chip, very AI heavy stocks pulling back in here today after that run up that we had last week going into this week. Now, as far as our Mag 7 goes, a lot of them were actually green into green on the day, or at least green at some point in here, right? So you had Apple just kind of through the roof. Amazon was green for a little while, then pulled back. So more or less good for the Mag 7, bad for AI. But overall, the question is, where is our volatility going to end up? And is today just a setup day? So if you look at the VIX in here as compared to the S&P and the QQQ or the NASDAQ in here, you would think, oh my goodness, the implied volatility is probably through the roof in here today, right? Actually, it wasn't. The VIX still in that $15 handle. So the question is, are we just setting up this trading session for what is going to happen tomorrow, right? So you have VIX expiration coming up tomorrow. You also have Fed minutes coming out. Was today just kind of a setup day? Just price everything in. Let's consolidate. Let's take a breather, and then we'll go forward from here. That is kind of the question in here. For our video in here today, we're going to look at a couple stocks. We're going to look at Google, and we're going to look at AMD. Google is actually one of the stocks that ended in the green in here today. 344 is where we ended, basically flat on the day. We're kind of trading in this weird consolidation area right here. So you kind of chalk it up between that 330 and then right around that 370 area. We've kind of been sitting in here for 3 months or so. So the question is, are we going to break out of here either one way or the other? You can see that just about 4 weeks ago, we tried to breach down out of this to a low in here about 315, but when we immediately popped back up in here the next week. So the question is, which way are we going to get a confirmation of a nice breach and hold of either direction out of this channel that we're currently in? But anyway, to the upside in here, 349, that's where our 9-day EMA is. That's going to be a nice level as well. It was a good spot of support for us in the past. And it was also a high for us coming all the way back in here if you go to the back of or the beginning of February in here. Outside of that 349, we're going to be looking at, like we mentioned, 370. Outside of there, 386. To the downside in here, we're going to be focusing on 340 and then 320. And that's kind of where our 50-day SMA and our lower trend line overall structure in here is kind of meeting up. So that is going to be a spot that should be our max pain in here. Anything outside of there, though, we're just going to be looking at that nice 300 psych level. Your implied volatility in here obviously did not expand in here like we would hope today, just like in other stocks where it expanded a little bit. But we're still looking at an IVR in here about 14. You have a $4 expected move priced in by tomorrow's expiration Friday, about $7 if you go all the way out to next Friday. It looks like a $12 expected move being priced in here in Google. And like we said before at the beginning of the video, more or less the Mag 7 stocks in here kind of held sway and weren't really affected that much, if at all, by the overall large pullback that we had. We're also going to look at AMD in here, though. This was a stock that was actually really affected. If you would look at where we opened today, at 9:30 and where we closed at 4 p.m., you'd go, really not that bad of a day. Well, actually, if you were looking at pre-market and comparing to where we closed yesterday, then you could see that the low today as compared to where we closed yesterday is about a 30-point difference. So a huge pullback in here. Although if you're just looking at the quotes from open to close, you would say, not too bad. But overall, nice recovery in here at the end of the day. AMD just couldn't drag the NASDAQ up with it, though. I thought that if we could get AMD over 480, then perhaps we could get Micron to kind of jump in on the fun as well. A little bit of a run up in here. It did kind of, but I thought those two could really kind of piggyback off each other and then just carry the NASDAQ to a nice little 719 close, or QQQ 719 close in here. Obviously couldn't get that, but AMD kind of just did its own thing in here and nobody else followed. So that's going to be something as we're trading throughout the week to watch. We're going to see if AMD is going to continue to just kind of do its own thing in here on the run ups. Obviously on the pullbacks, it's going to pull back with everything else, but on the run ups, are we going to have little $5 jumps here and there where it is not following the NASDAQ and it's not following things that would be in its related sectors? We're going to look for a little bit of a sympathy play in here because we do have NVIDIA earnings coming up next week. So AMD, we're going to be looking for some sort of a piggyback off of there as we're climbing into that NVIDIA earnings. And then obviously whatever movement we get outside of that earnings report from NVIDIA, AMD is going to be affected as well. But your IV ranking here is sitting about 30. You got about $11 expected move priced in by tomorrow, Friday, about 20 bucks. Go out to next Friday, 34 if you go out to your September monthlies, right around a $56 expected move being priced in here by AMD. On the chart, though, technically, what are we looking at? To the upside, we're going to be focusing on that 500 level. That is going to be something that we really, really need to get back over and hold. If not, then we have to kind of worry about this lingering blue line right here, this 9-day EMA that's currently sitting at 493. That would be a spot that we would love to close over, especially on this weekly chart, just give us a little bit of optimistic hope in here. But if not, then we're just going to see if we can stay above that 480. To the downside in here, obviously, we just mentioned 480. Outside of that, we're looking at 455, 424, and then obviously that big 400 psych level in here on the chart. So that's kind of what we're looking at in here. This thing could go either way. Obviously, with a big run up that we just had, consolidation is good. A red week in here so far, just down 5%. Even this week is a good thing for us, really, because we want to kind of reset. We don't want to get too far over our heads in here where there's going to be a larger pullback. So we'll take this. Hopefully it stays here. But if not, obviously the big level in here to keep an eye on is 480. And then anything to the upside, we're watching 500. To the downside, obviously, like we just mentioned, that 455. So let's see what happens in here. Keep an eye on your VIX tomorrow because we do have VIX expiration. So that is something to watch. And also we are looking at the Fed minutes coming out tomorrow. So that is going to be something that we will be trading as well. So let's see what happens as we continue out through this week and then through the end of August in here. All right, guys, if you like this video, make sure to check us out on all of our social media. We also have a Discord service if you are interested, and you can find all of our socials in the description below.